Hello everybody, welcome back to Pan Celtica. This little audio upload is different from the usual that we have here on the podcast because I just finished the latest episode of a show called Yellow Jackets that you may or may not have heard of. I encourage you to watch it if you're at all into shamanism and Native American like folklore, etc., etc. It's a very, very magic, witchy show with a dark slant, obviously, because that's how our pop culture takes these things. And that's what is got me thinking right after I finished it. I won't spoil anything for you if you haven't seen it. Again, you should go watch it. But on the posters for this show is a young girl with antlers, right? And a veil over her face. This is a reoccurring character, I suppose, in the show. Sometimes it appears as just a shadow, like a silhouette of an antlered, what appears to be an adult woman, and sometimes it's an antlered young girl. And one of the characters themselves also dresses as this antler girl. It's again, I don't want to get into spoilers, but it's like a spirit of these woods that they're in, right? This antlered female. And first of all, that brings up these thoughts of like gender play, also of transgenderism, of the sacred feminine, the sacred masculine becoming one form. We could muse on that for a while, but what bothers me about it in the show is, initially this antlered woman is seen as a positive, but then almost immediately is deemed negative and is now being shown to be most likely a negative force. And it harkens back to I think of my ancestors, the Celts, right? And how there's lots of archaeological evidence and of course written evidence which was archaeologically found, but there's lots of evidence of the Celts believing in, worshiping, revering, working with, an antlered being, be it male or female, as this sacred entity of the woods of nature, right? Like Cernunnos, for example, obviously. And, this was a, not really benevolent, but just a neutral force, right? That could be obviously very benevolent. And, Julius Caesar and everybody came with their Christianity and scared, the Celts, forced the Celts to Christianize and lose their beliefs and bastardized their gods. So in turn, these antlered beings were turned into, something akin to horned beings that, have been demonized, right? As a symbol of evil. Which is quite the opposite of what the original intent of what it meant to be a horned one or an antlered one, right? And not just in Celtic society. This is a prevalent theme everywhere. To see human people or human presenting people with animal parts on their bodies. I mean, we see that in Egypt. And that is a sacred thing. It shows a deep communion with the spirit of those animals, of the natural forces around you. It is a person or a person-like being who is infused with nature, is inseparable, knows the secrets and the arcana of Gaia, right? And now, in the present day, still, I mean, we're talking about thousands of years of Christianization, right, across the world. We have these antlered images pop up and these horned images, and still, after thousands of years, we are still stuck on Christian bias and Christian views because we're told to not think outside that box. And it's just upsetting to me to see a figure that I hold so dear to me, obviously, as a a Southern slash Celtic, I guess, practitioner. It's upsetting to see something that you love so much shown in a bad light when there is no good light alternative. It would be different if we were constantly seeing positive portrayals of paganism, of modern witches, but we don't. We don't. All we really get is the negative or the supernatural fantastical, like fictional. That's all we get. And I don't know, it's upsetting. It's not fair. And I just don't like seeing an antlered being presented as this ominous, malicious force on these girls in this show and the women. No spoilers, but there are girls and women in this show. I don't like that. However, the show's still ongoing. And maybe this force is so primal, right? Is so chthonic in some cases. Maybe it is not forcing, but it is, driving these girls and women to face their primal selves, their shadow selves. How do you reconcile your deepest, darkest self with the potential of your highest, lightest self? How can those both coexist in one person, right? I guess I could get on board if that's the messaging here. So far in the show, again, this is slightly spoilery, but so far in the show, this antlered being hasn't done anything, quote unquote evil. It has done some things that are definitely quote unquote holy, I would say. It has done some things that are quote unquote sketchy, but not evil. I don't know. Just thoughts that I have. Feeling very protective of the lore of my people, of my ancestors, and I don't know. In the South, I'm always trying to tell you guys how Celtic beliefs are still very prevalent in the South, at least here in Alabama. And that is because, we're filled with tons of people like myself who are descendant of Scot-Irish heritage, because that is the majority of the people that settled here after Spain sold Alabama to the U.S., well, what would become the U.S. No, it already was the U.S. I apologize. Anyway, the Celtic influence is very big here still, because the South is so, I almost said clannish, but I don't mean like in a KKK way. Just like, we're very insular. We're a very oral, tradition-driven people, just like the Celts, our ancestors. We are all about certain recipes of food, and each family has their own variation of that, and that is also very, very everybody. That's a global phenomenon, but with the specific recipes we're talking about, like kokanen and corned beef and, these beef stews and our cornbread recipes. These are things that stem from Irish and Scottish and Welsh and English traditions. Our food is just an evolution of that food. And, in the South, this was my point, actually, but in the South, you hear stories from hunters, because hunting's very big here, obviously, about, seeing humans who have antlers growing out of their head. And it's like a myth here, right? Like a folktale. And that stems, again, from my people, of our people's ancestors. These Celts who believed that there was a being or beings in the woods, potentially, with horns and antlers or hooves like over in Greece and Rome, and Yeah, I'm going to repeat myself now, so we're going to wrap it up. But I just feel very protective of our our shared neo-pagan history, of our shared Celtic influence that is in everything. It's a huge influence on Wicca. So even if you don't consider yourself to be Celtic or practicing Celtic beliefs, you're certainly observing them in some way, like the four Sabbats, the fire festivals, are Celtic. But anywho, ramble over. You really should watch Yellow Jackets. It's a really awesome show. If you do watch it, disclaimer: it's not a horror show, but there are some uncomfortable moments, perhaps for you, if you're not, down with like unnerving, ooky spooky sometimes. But really, it is mostly just a drama, and it's fantastic, and is just becoming more and more and more witchy with each episode, and I think that's so cool. And again, the witchiness of it, so far at least, is being portrayed in a hyper realistic way, which is what I love so much about this show. The spells that these people are casting are unknown to them. Like they're just following their instincts, and will sometimes go into chants. Sometimes they'll instinctively light a candle of circles. They give offerings at this hollowed out stump. Like it's a great show, and the magic again is like very, very much like real magic that we practice, and I really love it. I just wish that there wasn't such a negative slant. And if they are going to show that, show the positive sides of magic too, Anywho, uh, I don't even know what I'm going to call this episode. But thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to try to give you a regular episode of Pan Celtica this week too. Not just this one, but one where we actually talk about something from Celtic history. But until next time, you can always check out my link down below. Go to my website, alabamamagic.com. Look at the services I offer there. I would appreciate your support so much. This is my full-time job as I study for my doctorate, and I appreciate everything that you have done for me, and I hope that I can give back something to you in return that is helpful or inspirational or even just fun. And until next time, be safe, be well, and be informed. Goodbye.